Good afternoon. I'm Martha Johnson, Director of the Mayer Museum of Art at Randolph College. And on behalf of the entire staff at the Mayer, I'd like to welcome you to the 34th Annual Helen Clark Berlind Symposium. Yay! We begin this afternoon by acknowledging the land Randolph College occupies was inhabited by Yesa, the people, but due to warfare, disease, forced migration, assimilation, and broken treaties, the people were reduced in number and were forced to a fraction of the land they once occupied. Today, descendants of the original people of the land, the Monacans, understand that, quote, "The land is the people, and the people are the land, and we are not strangers on any of the land that was once considered our territory," end quote. They are not relics of the past. They live among us, and we honor them. The Berlind Symposium is always held in conjunction with the college's annual exhibition of contemporary art. The first annual opened at the college in 1911. It is the longest-running series of original exhibitions of contemporary art staged annually by an academic institution. Before we get started, I would like to thank Mary Gray Shockey, class of 1969 and former trustee, who has generously supported every annual since the 100th, including this, the 114th annual exhibition, The Audacity of Paint. We will start with a 1-hour artist talk during which we will hear from all three artists, Sally Egbert, Julia Joe, and Sue McNally. Their short bios are in the exhibition catalog, which you should all help yourselves to. They're over there, in that case by the wall. They will present tag team style, and since each must condense a lot into a little bit of time, we ask that you save your questions for them until after the panel discussion, when we will have more time to do that. After Sue presents, there will be an intermission. Please take this time to view the exhibition and enjoy refreshments, but sadly not at the same time. As you might have noticed, we are not allowed food or drink in this gallery per terms of a loan agreement. We will then regroup and promptly begin our panel discussion at 2:30. So let's begin. Sally, would you please start us off?
Hello. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good, because I'm not good with this stuff. Thank you for having me and my fellow artists and everybody who organized this. It's really wonderful to be here. So this is me. This is a painting in the hall. It's called Saturnia. And this is a painting when I was a very little girl that I fell in love with, and I realized as an artist I've carried it with me my entire life. And it's also really important for me because there's water in it, and there's a lot of water in my paintings, sense of movement, and it pulls me through. And this is one of my other my paintings kind of float around. I don't want them to have a real beginning or an end. I want them to catch sections of our lives. Even when I was in the train coming down yesterday, looking out the window and seeing everything moving by is quite beautiful for me. This is another painting called Backwoods, just driving around and passing and pulling things in. And I also love the moon. I like nightscapes, so this is a detail of one. And I am a little nervous, but honestly, if I look at Sue's paintings, Julia's paintings, and my paintings, it should center me because as an artist, that should center us. So I just felt a little better sharing that. And I don't like to do public speaking. Okay. Thank you, my friends. And this is also another painting, Night Garden, where I want floating in my pieces, and then I want something to anchor them. So it's kind of like a metaphor for life. We're anchored, but then something comes in and can change and move, so. And this is another moon on water. And that's a collage. I cut things up and put them back in and stuff. And this, I do painting classes in my studio, and I have this here because when we make art, we should just do what we want. There is no right or wrong. You should just create and let it all happen. And the pieces in the back were my students, and they're amazing. And they all come from, some are lawyers, some are doctors, some are waitresses, and this is what they do. So we should all respect our creativity. And then I work collages, flowers, and then I make up landscapes in my head. I pull also from what's around me. That's another piece that's like moving water again. And this, I put this in Mondrian because this is a very early Mondrian, and it's wonderful to see in the bottom, you can see where he came, where he ended up. He didn't know what was straight ahead of him, but it's amazing. He continued to work, and just, he brought us to all the boogie-woogie and all that stuff. So when you work, when you're a painter or anybody, when you question yourself, just keep on going. Don't stop. Or if somebody, you just have to work hard. And this is another piece of mine, just combining water and out floating shapes, and this piece I was thinking there were a lot of refugees at this point in the world trying to travel to other places, and I thought of these boats and being out at the sea with nothing really, and I felt like this piece captured that. There's a strength, but there's a fragileness, and so. And this is another piece. This is like 77 by 60 inches, and again, this is an older piece, but catching the movements. My work is more of a suggestion of a situation rather than a concrete, there is a portrait, there's a bottle of flowers or something. So I'm all about kind of letting the viewer also step in and say, oh, well, I see that, or I see this. And I love that when the viewer can also make it your own. So, and this is, in the morning when I like to wake up in the morning, go look at the flowers, and then go into my studio and work. So it's a special time for me. And these are all based on flowers. And I try to, the flowers feel like, to me, they have a personality, like their own spirit, they're their own, not human, but they have their own whole life of them. And some of my work is more punchy than others. This is I had just gone snorkeling, so I had that whole vibrancy of being underwater for this. And this is another piece from this similar period. And I use line to, I'll have my backgrounds will be subtle, and then I'll want a line to kind of tie everything down, but also let everything kind of still move around in space. And that's another example of something, a piece. And this is another series from my water series, when I was thinking of those kind of boats moving. And at the top is the same thought of the earlier painting. And this is just where I live in the summer. I take pictures, and they inspire me, and I can use them for reference. And this is a wall that had such beautiful color on it. So all the daily living informs me, just little snippets of, I'll see somebody's jacket, the color of that, or us. It's little things that inspire me. And this is one of my studios. I work in the city, and I also work out in Long Island. So, and these are, I work on the floor. I pour, and my floors are always. Everybody loves the floors, so I could do that if somebody's house, but. And then I stand everything up and finish that way. And that's another picture of my studio. And I sit on the floor most of the time, which is kind of fun, kind of interesting, sometimes trying to get up, but that's more recently. And these are all the pieces from the show here. And now I'm not nervous. Should I start again? No, I don't want to. So they're half made up, half from, I work from my head. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Sally. Well done. Hi, everyone. My name is Julia Jo. I'm a painter of those works over there, if you want to take a look. And I'm so excited to be here and tell you a little bit about who I am and what the work is about, I guess. But first, I think I want to just give you this moment to let the painting speak for itself, and you can speak to it directly. Because the more I tell you, the more information I give you, it'll shrink down to the words that I give you, which is the antithesis of what a painting should do. A painting, visual language is there and will always persist because words are more like currencies that we agree on in terms of meaning, so that we can meet halfway. So I'll take you first to my studio in Brooklyn. I live upstairs in this little building on a very gentrified street. And it is a 110-year-old carriage house. And I'm so surprised they didn't knock this down and build a condo over it. But yes, there's no basement, first floor, unfinished. This is my painting cave. That's where you can find me all the time. I first wanted to show you how I begin my works. I think you can already tell that there's a certain speed, certain seriality, if you will. So whenever I begin a new body of works, I like to set up as many canvases as I can. It's almost like this room. One reason for that is because I want the paintings to compete with each other, just like writing, just like people in one room, there will always be a standout. Maybe one painting will resolve itself quicker, it'll come up faster, and then that kind of gives me a waypoint. Oh, I want to bring everything else over there. So that dialogue between the works is very important, because second reason is I will end up tossing half of these, and I think it's very important to edit your own work, because not everything you put forth will be the best. Yeah. So as you can see, that's my palette table. And this was while I was preparing for my solo show at Charles Moffat Gallery in Soho almost a year and a half ago. Little zoom in of my palette table. Now this side is filled with oil pastels like this, or oil sticks. So oil sticks are very abusively priced, delicious materials. They are just more pigment and wax. So you are just like a kid with a crayon. You can go directly right on top of anything, and then it will create this goopy, raw, very connected drawing mark, which you can spread thinner with a brush. You can mix oil. And then, as you can see, I have a range of very tiny works. They're 10 by 10. So I think it's also important to not shy away from certain scale. If you I guess maybe the painters will relate, but if you want to shy away from something, you got to really face it head on, because maybe there's a frustration in a certain scale that will ultimately and inevitably inform a problem in a larger work as well. And I think this is a good place to kind of see where the very beginning stage of each painting looks like. The smaller works are a little different because they are just so manageable. They're bite-sized, as I would call it. So they become like little candy, little gems. So you don't necessarily see a full composition because the mark itself becomes a figure, if you will. But if you look at the larger works, and this is the finished works that you see over here, but I wonder if you can make out figures. Yeah, moments of figuration. And this is the finished product. And to have them displayed, they could be a triptych. They're constantly speaking with each other in terms of color interaction, the speed. Maybe because of all the abstraction, you don't necessarily get the story unless you spend an ample amount of time. And even so, you won't really get the sense that perhaps we don't really have a solid story. Like, you don't know if this is a dinner party. You don't know if this is someone taking a nap. And I think I want to start with this one because this has a very strong central figure, a female figure looking very vulnerable. And I start with a very solid figurative composition. I think you can see with those two works especially, you can see two figures, you can see almost a tender but fierce kiss almost. And the more I work on a painting, I want to abstract and kind of lose and distort, and I want the figures to hide, and I want the narrative to be disjointed. I don't want the painting to give you everything, because what is the point if the painting constantly needs a narrative to lean on? Then perhaps it cannot speak for its own. And I think a finished, successful painting should give you everything that you need in order to experience it. And you shouldn't need to know anything about me, ideally. And of course, if you know a bit about me, it helps, but a visual work should speak for itself and should be able to hold its space on the wall, like all these wonderful works here. So just kind of walking you through to what a typical exhibition looks like. It's a lot of contained chaos, as I like to call them. They're organized, but it's a universe of its own, even though we have some recognizable figures. And I want to bring you to this red 80 by 80 painting. It's very energetic, and I think this is a good time to talk about my relationship to color and how I approach things. So before we are exposed to the corporate correlations of color, red is for love, and maybe you're feeling blue and sad. But before all that, I think our relationships with color are forged before we can speak. I think it's much more immediate, much more visceral. So even though this is such an energetic, speedy painting because of the gestures and the marks flowing, and there's this all-at-onceness that you just take in the whole painting at once, I always find it fascinating that color will always have a very intimate relationship with you as the viewer. Maybe the red just feels very, very cozy, almost soft. I don't know where that relationship comes from, but I think that's why we're always drawn to color. When a painting stops you for some reason, when you look at a Rothko, like what comes out at you is so different. And I think that is where technology, science falls short, because we still can't quite figure out, but we feel it in the soul, if you will. Yeah, I almost see one informing another. It's like one page out of a novel that I'll never finish, perhaps. But yes, I guess with this show in particular, I thought so much about the futility of communication, especially in relationships. So you will see a lot of kind of glimpses of lovers. I thought a lot about like my mother, my sister, family dynamics, all these kind of innate human relationships that are almost tropes, like a scorned lover, jealousy. I think all those things are kind of, they're easy to grasp because we all experience it, but I think in order to translate that and hoping that arrives to another person is a very, very difficult task, because first, words fall short of everything that we experience within our bodies. And I think that's where visual language comes in, because we already have so much that we connect all visual cues with. So you see one central figure, I thought of just like tender, falling asleep. Maybe you're being swept away into a dream. And I think that went really well with these kind of waves and strokes that I wanted to distort the figure into. I think this one actually had 3 figures, but then at the end of, towards the end, it just turned into one central figure. So I make it a point to lose as much as possible the starting point, so that in the end, maybe it opens up even more, and then you can imbue your narrative onto the painting. Like I said, if it needs a backstory, maybe it's not presenting itself enough. All right, so back to the studio. I think that one looks familiar. It's over there. And I think you can see a very clear figure right there. And that's how it all begins. Oftentimes I say I apply color in the shapes of figures. And then it starts, and maybe I just am very drawn to the tender posture of a figure, so I leave that behind. But then perhaps this arm turns into another face, and then another figure emerges from the lower left. It's just always reacting to what is there, but not in this haphazard, let's just go for it manner. So, and I think this is a great example to show you. Maybe a couple days in the studio, it starts to look like this, the color and the figures. Oh goodness, okay, an embrace, I see it, vulnerable to figures. And then this just gets built and built and built, because I don't really want it to be just a solid figuration. I think abstraction, even if it is a complete abstraction, we will always try to find tangibility. We will always try to connect it to something of the world that we exist in. So I really want the paint itself to perform on the surface, so that you're constantly pushed back. The painting's giving you too much. It doesn't want to give you the things that you need to maybe perhaps piece the puzzle together. But I also see the goopiness and the paint that is hanging and just going right on the surface to also be part of the greater narrative and a very key player. And I think this was maybe 70% done, and then I really go back in, and with those works, I really wanted the drawing to come back on top, which is a very interesting vibration it creates with the sweeps of brush strokes and then these lines and the drawing, which comes very innately to me. And here we have it. And I think I hesitate to tell you what I thought about with this one. I thought about just on a lazy Sunday afternoon, maybe me and my sister were taking a nap, but then again, this figure kind of turned into someone I don't know, or maybe this figure reminds me more of someone I met or a friend that I no longer keep in touch with. There's a certain tenderness, vulnerability, different in-between feelings that I want to just tug at. And I ask myself, how do you paint vulnerability? How do you paint feelings of inadequacy? How do you paint these fundamental human feelings just using perhaps what we are the most used to, which is marks made by the body and the body itself? And I think just a hand flexed a certain way, holding a certain tension, already translates so much energy and simply tension, because we all have access to those muscles. And I think we are already so fully aware of all the figuration that has occurred since the birth of painting. So I think the body and the figure is always so fully loaded, so fun to wrestle with. And I wanted to show you this one that I started with, because this one was worked side by side with this blue one. And it's fun to see that it almost goes from very figurative to the more abstract as we travel to the right. And it's always a dance, the figuration, the abstraction. I think I want the figures to hide because there's something dark underneath, but also wanting to be seen and to be performing for the audience, wanting to entice you, but wanting to run away at the same time. So I want my paintings to just hold you and to be able to grow with you, keep up a conversation with you through the ages. I think that will be the biggest reward of living with a painting, something that grows with you. And thank you.
All righty. Hi, I'm Sue McNally, this person. And I just want to say thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be part of the show. The Mayor is a wonderful museum, and I have two lovely new art friends, so it's really exciting. These are my paintings back here. Oops, sorry. And I'm going to start you off with this picture of myself in 1992. I'm a youngster. I'm 25 years old. And I went on my first big cross-country trip with my friend Heather in our crappy 1978 van that we bought. And we had built it all out, and we were going to move into it, and I stuffed it with canvases and paints because I was going to paint a painting in every state. But the reality was I hadn't left New England very much, and as soon as I got on the road, I was visually blown away. I was overstimulated. There was so much to look at. Every landscape was different. Every space was different. It was just mind-blowing. So this is the one painting I attempted in the Badlands of South Dakota. It was terrible. It does not exist. So I'm showing you this because the idea is that I had this idea when I was so young, and then you fast forward to 2010 when I actually started the project. And at this time, I'd been traveling around the country for about 2 to 3 months every year. I was a seasonal worker. I was a waitress, house painter, just whatever I could do to make as much money in as little time as possible so that I could paint and travel. And so I had been around the country numerous times, and so I started right away with the places that I had visited a lot, places that I had a personal connection to, places I just loved, and I kind of banged out 30 paintings in about 4 years-ish very quickly. So this is the first painting I did. This is Ruby Beach in Washington State. It's in the Olympic Peninsula, and one of the things that I was very obsessed with at that time was making sure that each painting was very specific, that you, as the viewer, could stand where I stood and see all the things that I saw. And also that I could also make a painting that enveloped me. So these paintings are all in the scale of these larger paintings here, the large size. And I wanted to feel a physical connection to what I was making, like I was back in that awesome place that I loved being in. So I just thought I'd show you a few from that stage where everything is really specific and the places I love. And then so I chose this one to show you next because it kind of mixes a few of the things that I was really interested in. This is Nevada. It's a painting of Double Negative by an artist named Michael Heiser. He's one of the earthworks guys from the 70s, and he's still doing these like monumental, ridiculous things out in the desert. And so this is a very early one, and I had only ever seen photographs from the air. So it's the edge of a mesa, and the cut goes through it, and it's a perfect line. And so when we went there, I was looking all around, and I realized like the only way to really show this thing, and it's, you know, degraded over time, and was to stand and look straight through to the cut. So I'm on one end of the cut, it cuts through the edge of the mesa and comes through the other side, and it's a specific place. You can stand there, you can go there, or you can stand in front of the painting and feel the location. This, oh my God, I'm a teenage boy. This is Massachusetts. It represents Massachusetts. So I grew up in New England, on a bay, Massachusetts, Rhode Island combo, the two states meet. And this is a place that I played endlessly as a child. I lived in a house that abutted a dairy farm. So my sisters and I would hop the fence, and it was very wooded until you got into where the cows were. And we would go in, and there was this little cow pond. And it's just where I spent all my hours as a kid. So this, I'll use the pointer, but I don't remember how. This thing here is a thing that stuck out into the pond, and if you stomped on it, goldfish would swim out. And then this tree was basically impossible to climb. And in the winter, when it froze, you could go out and shovel it off and get out to that white rock and sit on the white rock, and that was like the holy grail of being in my neighborhood. And so I felt this was really an obvious choice for Massachusetts. And then just from a painterly construct, it's, again, a specific, everything is, the tree, the hump, the thing, the pond, all those things are specific. There's a lot of, you know, freedom in everything else around the canvas. And because it was so heavily green in that wet area that I played, I used all the green, and I decided on the orange sky because they really push each other apart. But then I also thought about it later because I also grew up near a power plant. So I was like, maybe that's some hideous sky from there. So meanwhile, all this time that I'm making these projects, I'm still traveling for a couple of months every year. And what we're doing is living in really wild locations. So just like setting up a camp somewhere, totally random, you know, cooking, sleeping, eating, not really showering, all the things that you do when you're living outdoors for 3 or 4 weeks, and hiking around. I'm not, you know, a mountaineer or anything crazy like that. But I like to live in the space because I want to feel the wind. I want to feel where the sun comes. I want to know how the smell is and see the same, like see this shape, this shape, this shape over and over and over again. And then that pattern becomes part of a painting that I might make. So then at some point, my husband and I bought some land in southeast Utah. We love the Southwest, and it's way out in Nowheresville, and we have this yurt on it, and so we would be based from that area. And that really satisfied an itch I had for being like an indoor-outdoor liver. Like, that's my fantasy, that I could be half inside and half outside all the time. And so this is really like a fancy kind of camping and living in that thing, and then we could do trips and things from all over the place from that location. And we still have that. We've had it for 20 years. So then at a certain point, I got a little bit slowing down on this project because I wasn't feeling challenged as a painter. Like, I had this system, and it had worked for so long. I used, you know, I would take all the photographs and reference the photographs so it was specific. And I had kind of moved beyond this process. I was a little over it, and I needed to take a break and then move on as a painter and see what happened and then revisit the project later on. So I had a show scheduled for 2020 at the North Dakota Museum of Art. I had spent some time in North Dakota. They have a wonderful little residency there in this cool house out in nowhere outside of the city. And COVID obviously kicked it down the road 2 years. So I ended up being in my studio like full on during that whole COVID time. And I really upped my game. So size-wise, how I was making things, I really changed a lot. And so this is a 19-foot long painting. I have one wall in my studio that's 20 feet by like 9.5 feet, so this is 19 by 9, I guess. And the idea was I was just going to take all of the objects that had been stuck in my head for all these years by looking at landscape, living in landscape, thinking about landscape, and create something from my imagination and work my way through the painting. And because it's such a huge painting, it allowed me to like get really deep in little places. Like I could go deep here and deep here and then really like broad somewhere else. Like I had all this ability to move in a way that I had never really let myself do. And so I'm still using like upright trees, cloud formations, blobs that could be rocks or bushes, lay down trees, marks that might be wind or brambles. Like, it's just the size of this painting and my physical interactions with it really helped change the way that I physically moved when I was making a painting. So I just thought I'd show you a little picture here from the North Dakota Museum of Art. It's a really beautiful museum. It's got two giant sides like this, and I had one whole side, and I decided I would do 6 to 8 really large paintings and the same really large drawings like this big, and I narrowed it down to 4 paintings and 4 drawings. So it was very sparsely hung, but it really took the space, and it felt like a really good relationship between what I was trying to make and how I could kind of honor the space and how beautiful that space was. Next, in recent years from 2023 into 2024, I was the Edward E. Elson Artist in Residence at the Addison Gallery of American Art in Andover. Sorry, that's always a hard one for me to say. And I had this unbelievable studio for 3 months. It was massive, no windows and just a giant skylight. So it was like being in a casino all the time. I never knew the time. I didn't have to cook dinner, go anywhere, pick up my mom. I didn't have to do any of the things. So I could just sleep. The apartment was right above it. I could sleep, wake up, go down, make, eat when I felt like it, standing up, do everything, and I never really knew what time it was, and I was highly productive during this time. So this is continuing that concept of making things from my head, but I think I was really dialing in my imagery in a more specific way. I introduced spray paint as a tool for me, which I had never done before. And I was really conscious of using spray paint because I'm not doing spray paintings. I'm not a graffiti person. I want to use it as a tool. Every painting thing that I use has to command itself as the tool. And so this is, one of the successful pieces that I did there. It's quite large. It's maybe about 1.5 times the size, bigger than those, taller and bigger, because for some reason I have to make everything huge. But this represents, in the end, oh, wait, I forgot an important thing. Everything at this point is a full-blown random mark. So I might lay it on the floor, throw something on it, make a mark, stand it up, spray paint something, or just go like this to 10 different canvases without really thinking it through. And then I move them around, and eventually one of them starts to look like something as I add things. So this started to become this vision of me in the woods in New England in the wintertime, which is something I really love. Most New Englanders hate the winter, but I love it. And, you can really see the stone walls that time of year. You can really find your way through all these crazy brambles and all this stuff. So this was a really positive reaction to introducing spray paint as a tool with my other materials. So here's a picture of half of the studio. It's gigantic, and it's so crazy. So that painting on the left is the one I just showed you, which is, much bigger than these. And then all the other things. I just wanted to show you like an example of a bunch of stuff that's really randomly in early phases and how I kind of just get into it and go from there and make a giant mess and live in that for a long period of time. I also do another thing. It's just a random photo I thought I'd show you. I take a lot of really bad photographs of broken trees, moss piles, rocks, clouds, things, blah, blah, blah. Anything that I think is a weird form, a beautiful color, something in nature that I can reference if I need to, or at least I've planted it in my head somehow. Because a lot of people have asked me throughout the years, like, you know, how did you decide to make this look like this? And the reality is I'm just taking something I've seen and blowing it out of the water. I'm doing my own, I'm putting my vision on top of something that actually exists. And so this is just a funny example of like a split giant crappy tree that I took a picture of, and I might have two arms going like this someday, who knows? So then at the Addison, I also did this painting, which is the same size as the other one, again, quite large. And this represents North Dakota. So when I was in North Dakota, it's the area that I was in is this huge agricultural farming all around me. And in every field, there was this giant pile of stuff. And I would be like, hey, excuse me, what are those giant piles of things? And nobody even noticed them. They were just so used to it. And I kind of figured it out. They're just plowing all the stuff into a pile. And so I decided that would represent my time in North Dakota. You know, you're not standing in front of that pile like in the earlier years where you were standing in front of Ruby Beach. But this is just a giant pile that I felt was a really good example of my experience there. Like, this is through my lens always, this interpretation of the American landscape. And I'm using spray paint, charcoal, all these things, and actually this pile started really small, and I ended up making it the star of the show. And I felt like it made the painting what it was to really pump that scale up. This is, while I was at the Addison, they had a show of new acquisitions, and I was lucky they purchased this painting, which is this size, from the early stages of making all the paintings of the American states. And this is Maroon Bells in Colorado, which is a really recognizable location. It's very, very iconic. And at the time, the mountains, Maroon Bells are the mountains in the center, way in the back. And they're drawn tightly, specifically, because the idea is that if you're standing there, or you've been there, or you know it, you can see Maroon Bells. And I just wanted to show this thing because I have my dad, actually, standing in the foreground in relation to the size. And then in this room, it was really exciting because my room was a Western room, but I was with really contemporary artists, Native American artists, old, long dead people, Ansel Adams. And it was really great to be contextualized in that way. I really enjoyed that. And then this is a lousy slide. I just want to say that. It's really red and really red, so I just got to say that. It's a little foggy or something. But this is one that I did at the Addison. This represents Pennsylvania. It is Little Round Top at Gettysburg. And so I went to Gettysburg. I wanted to check it out. I was interested in that history, and I went there. And it's not quite like this. But when you go there and you're standing on Little Round Top, you can understand the strategic importance of that location. Because you can see down, you can see everything, and there's these big blocky rocks where you can hide behind and do your shooting and all that kind of stuff. And I read a lot about this time period. And at the Addison, they actually had a lot of historic war photographs of this time, so I could kind of look at things. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was use the color red to kind of talk about this death, because nearly 1,000 people died on this one day at this battle. And it was pivotal. It really pushed the North to the more important place. But also, it was like everything you read about it talks about how beautiful the weather was that day. And so I had the blue sky. And then for me, I use a lot of these orbs a lot of time to kind of talk about the space between land and sky. And so I put that one in there in order to like compress you down, to give you a little bit of that feeling, because it takes away from the beauty of just a blue sky, is sort of how I saw that. And then just the last couple images. This is a recent painting. I wanted to get back into the States project like I'd started at the Addison, and so I'm back in my studio. and I made some random marks here, and I started to see corn, and I decided in my head that I would use this to represent Indiana, because this space to me was like I was walking through the corn, and I got to the edge of the cornfield, and I was about to step into the next space that was just whatever field is growing in front of me. And what I found really exciting about making this painting is that part of the country where, there's a lot of dismissive comments about the flyover land and things that people say in New England. And what I've always enjoyed about being there is that the amount of space you can see, the amount of space you can feel, the air, the movement, the clouds, you see so many layers of things because it is flat a lot, and you can really see deeply. And it's a very different experience than where I live, standing on the edge of the ocean and looking over the ocean, because there's nothing out there to really ground your vision and bring you into it so that you can feel it. This is like, there's the land way, 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 way over there at the end of that field. And in between, there's these clouds, and then those black marks make this idea of the motion of the wind for me. And that is also, I used oil pastels like Julia does, because I had never done that before, but I wanted to make all little tiny marks and create these like striations of color. And so that ended up in my mind. I decided I would use this for Indiana, and I kind of built it out that way. And then last, I'm just going to show you the last large painting I did, which is, this is a pretty big one, maybe those two put together and a little taller. And this represents, this is called Two Sisters and a Dad. And my dad, as you can see, has his cane now, and he had a little bucket list trip. He wanted to go to Newfoundland, and he wanted to go to Lonzo Meadow, which is where the Vikings came in, and he's an Irish guy, and he loves all that stuff. And so two of my sisters and I took him there, and we had this really wonderful trip. It's such a beautiful landscape. It's unbelievably rugged, but also kind of welcoming and calming and rolling, and the lifestyle there is just very different. It's extremely rural, but also kind of little hamlets and things. And so we took thousands of pictures. We drove all up the west side, and we got to the top, which is Lonzo Meadow. And then we went to another city, and we took, boat rides and whale watches and all the things. And so what I did was I combined a bunch of different locations to represent this place, because I'm not as obsessed with you can stand there anymore, but I do want you to feel the landscape a little bit. So this is a combination of a fjord, which is inland, and really the boat we were on was like this big. It's like a tiny little boat, like a giant, like 100 people on it. And so it's so huge, but one of the things that I kept noticing when I was there is that the mountains go up and they're super mountainous, but they chop off like a mesa. And so when I was home and I was making the painting, I decided it would be great for me to reference my photographs, but not use them to draw. It was more like reminding myself that yes, I did see it that way. I did see that the mountains kind of chop off at the top. It's not a peak, like in a lot of areas. And then the gray thing in the foreground and the purple thing behind it, those are things I pulled from the ocean edge, where it's really, it's like a dark shale, kind of rugged, cliffy edge with grass on the top and big caves that boats can go in and out of. And then a lot of places you'd be standing up high, and there's just this beautiful wildflower stuff looking out over it, like down the cliff at all of this big space. And so I just put all those things together, and I'm using a lot of different materials and a lot of freedom in my mark making. And so this is a nice culmination of all the things I've been doing for about a long time. And so that's it for me, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Sally, Julia, and Sue. We're going to take a short break now, and while we reset for the panel. So enjoy the refreshments, enjoy the art, and we'll see you back here at 2:30. On the occasion of the 80th annual exhibition, friends and family of Helen Clark Berlind, class of 1958, established a symposium in her honor, which would expand and extend the educational impact of the annual exhibition. We are indeed fulfilling their intent today with this panel of women. We are so happy you are with us today. And if you are not already a member, we invite you to join us in support of our educational mission and our commitment to community. You can join us online or pick up a membership brochure in the foyer today. The mayor's own curator of education, Laura McManus, serves as moderator today, and she will introduce our panelists. Laura has been on staff at the mayor for 10 years, during which time she has enriched and increased Randolph class visits and participation dramatically. She is a gifted educator and a tireless champion of artists. It's an honor to work with her, and I'm delighted to turn the program over to her.
Thank you, Martha. So, everyone, I'm so happy to be here today with this outstanding group of artists. In the past few weeks, I've had the opportunity to get to know them a little bit, either through our inspiring Zoom conversations and in person over meals filled with laughter and creative energy. They're not only talented, but also generous and full of spirit. Each brings a unique voice and vision to this discussion, and I'm delighted to introduce them to you. Sally Egbert has been making paintings, drawings, and installations between New York City and the Hamptons for over 3 decades. Sally studied at SUNY New Paltz and is the recipient of grants from the Pollock-Krasner Foundation, the Gottlieb Foundation, and the New York State Foundation for the Arts. Her work can be found in permanent collections, including the Tucson Museum of Art, Progressive Insurance Collection, and the Colby College Museum of Art. Reviewing Sally's work in Art in America, Eileen Miles notes, Sally Egbert's oil paintings are as hypnotic as aquariums. Her chief concern seems to be pinpointing distinctions to name the moment in color and space. Glenn O'Brien describes her work as, quote, magical tableau that conjured dream states outside of experience and history. On the far end, Julia Joe lives and works in Brooklyn. She earned her MFA at Parsons School of Design in 2019 after graduating with a BFA from Smith College in 2016. Julia uses a vibrant color palette to create compositions that blur the figurative and the abstract. She spent her childhood and adolescence moving between South Korea and states across the US. She draws upon a deep personal well of moments lost in translation, social miscues, and impersonal distance to inspire her practice. Julia has been featured in solo exhibitions at Charles Moffett Gallery in New York, James Fuentes in Los Angeles, and Jessica Silverman in San Francisco. Her work is in the permanent collections of the Institute of Contemporary Art, Miami, and the High Museum of Art in Atlanta. And finally, Sue McNally divides her time between Newport, Rhode Island, southeastern Utah, and traveling throughout the United States. Raised in New England, she earned a BFA from the University of Rhode Island and an MFA from the Savannah College of Art and Design. Sue draws figures, often self-portraits, but is best known for her landscapes. Her most ambitious body of work is her States series, representing many years of exploring the American landscape, camping and hiking in rural and remote areas. Sue has held numerous artist residencies, and her artwork is in permanent collections, including the Addison Gallery of American Art in Andover, Massachusetts, the Newport Art Museum in Rhode Island, and the North Dakota Museum of Art in Grand Forks, as well as the Rhode Island School of Design. I'm going to transition now to our conversation. Thank you all for being here, and all of you for being here. What I'd like to do is begin with the exhibition's title and with the curatorial focus that Martha Johnson has brought to the table, and talk about what those ideas mean to you and how they resonate with your own artistic practice. Are you all able to hear me okay? Because it seems awkward. Okay, great. So the title of the exhibition is The Audacity of Paint, which, by the way, I absolutely love that title, Martha. It's fabulous. The Audacity of Paint, which invites us to think about boldness and conviction. It implies a certain daring, a refusal to play it safe. So my question for each of you is, what does the word audacity mean to you in the context of your own practice? And what feels audacious about painting today? So you can answer both or either. And would you like to start, Sally? You look like you're ready to jump in. So. Okay.
Can everybody hear me?
There you go. You're good.
Well, when I was thinking about the title just a few days ago and today, the audacity to paint, just to even make one painting, easily, for me at least, it's 500 decisions that go in. What to do I put this there? Should that be there? No, that shouldn't be there. So it's a kind of tough journey, tough commitment to make. So it takes a lot of strength and a commitment. And that's where that word to me comes in.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just go down the line.
Okay, hello. Well, when I was reading the questions, I thought to myself, I don't really think there's anything audacious about my work, except maybe that I continue to make these very large things, which seem a little bit silly the older I get, and I can't pick them up sometimes. But I would say that if I were really thinking about it, it's just, I'm 58, I've been painting for 40 years now, and I think it's the sticking to it concept and never giving up and just keep going. And then what's audacious about painting today?
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, the world is exploding everywhere, and like it's like I'm just absorbing what I can, and then I don't think my painting practice is audacious because it's just what I do. And so I can't compare it to the concept of today, because I've always been a landscape painter, and it's like cool, not cool, cool, not cool for 40 years. So what does it? So it has no, nothing.
Okay.
So that's it for me.
Okay. All right. Julia.
I guess I love the title as well, but I think it could also be the audacity to just create. The creative act itself is very, it's an innate human urge, and I dare say need. It's like food and water, absolutely. We are kind of born to create. We've been creating since the birth of humankind. We have all the evidence everywhere. The cave paintings, I think the through line through brief yet long human history is just creation. And I think paint perhaps gets a lot of hate because painting also went through the up and down. Painting is dead, it's alive. It's dead, but it's like multiplied, which is funny because visual language will never die as long as we see, as long as we have these organs that we perceive the world with. Yeah, the audacity to just pursue an act for the sake of creating is what I thought about. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's stay on that that thought about creativity and this innate need, as you said, for creativity, because that connects a little bit to the other part of Martha's focus for this exhibition is the audacity of painting, of mark making, of the human touch while we're in the throes of this AI sort of tsunami, I think is the word that she used. So we live surrounded by screens and algorithms in a time when so much of image making is mediated by technology. Yet you all work in a medium, paint and with other variations, but paint that depends on slowness, touch, and intuition. So in this age when AI can generate images instantly, what does it mean to each of you to make marks by hand? And I'll go over to Julia first on this one.
Well, I think, in a way, thank goodness AI is, coming right for us, because now it's more imperative than ever that we cling, and not even cling, I think we're drawn more than ever to the human touch, and I think it'll be the case. I mean, generative AI, it's still pulling from what we have gathered in terms of database. So it's pulling from the images that we have put forth, and then it is, sure, learning as a response to what the users put in. All those images, in my opinion, they were already there. And I think AI so far has been an interesting, it's a new instrument, if you will. I think it was shocking with any technology. Camera changed painting forever. Films changed the point of view, how the perspective was like the godlike view, and then your eyes are centered. So like filmmaking completely obliterated that concept of like viewer is the center. Now the viewpoint can be anywhere. So I am excited, dare I say, that AI is already being used as a tool for a lot of artists, but I dare say it can never replace the human touch. Yeah, because what artists do is they create what wasn't there. I think AI can definitely you can plug in a prompt, say, hey, give me like a Guston-like painting. It'll spit out something that kind of learns the characteristics of like what is available, but what artists do is create from thin air, I dare say, yeah. So.
Okay.
Go last this time.
Yeah, exactly. So you're staying in the middle.
Okay.
You're middling it.
I'm middling it? Okay, great. I do well there. I read that question and I was thinking about it, and I think I will say this. I spent a couple of weeks trying to find an AI program where I would type in a description of my painting. To myself, I'd be like, make a painting that's the ocean, and it's kind of see-through, but it's a little bit gray, and there's stripes coming through it underneath, and then there's pink cloud, but only one big one. And I did all these like things, and I wanted to see what it would come up with. And a couple of them were pretty cool, and most of them were pretty lame. And then I could see as a tool, it could be kind of fun to mess around with it, but I don't sweat it, frankly. I don't think about it too much because, I mean, I know, like, if I were a superstar, maybe I could be poached or whatever would happen. But I don't worry about technology because it really doesn't play a role for me. If I could go back to no technology, I would probably take that option. Although I do look at my phone all the time. But still, I just don't ever see it really playing a big role for me, so I don't really think about it that often.
Okay. And Sally, how about you?
Well, just thinking about AI, so if AI had made all the paintings in this exhibit, which I guess now that's possible, then we wouldn't be here. And I wouldn't have met Sue, I wouldn't have met Julia, we would probably not all be sitting in this room. And that's, to me, devastating. So the whole thing with the computers and the AI, even when I go out out to a bar or anywhere, people are on their phones. They're not talking to each other. I'm on my phone sometimes, but it's to look information up. So I think that it's kind of really, we're at a almost tragic position right now. And even looking on a computer screen, I love color. It's different on every computer screen. It looks flat to me, it looks dead. So I think it's not a great thing.
Okay, so I feel like the three of you are representing kind of different approaches to digital imaging in general and AI, in the sense of your work just kind of moves alongside it and you're not really paying attention to it, to I wish it would just go away, kind of like an extreme, which I mean, I think represents a lot of people in the audience too, and something that I know I struggle with, because AI generated text can be an incredibly helpful time saver for little things like emails or, but then I can also feel like it's just sucking me of all creativity. So, yeah. You mentioned color, so I think I'm going to jump to the question about color, and also because, Julia, you spoke a lot about color during your talk. So color is a key component for your painting language for each of you. And Julia, you've described color as inherently emotional. And Sally, you've said you often pair colors that almost clash to create tension. So how do color and emotion work together in your paintings? Or do they? You want to? And you're also, I should have mentioned, welcome to reference any of the works in the room if that's helpful.
Well, when I start each painting, I'm setting up a vague imagined landscape or a mood, so I just let one color will lead to another color, and it kind of just will. It will inform itself. Each painting will, and I like to use colors that are kind of. If I had to repair the painting, it would be hard to remake that color. So colors for me is life. It's light, it's beautiful, it can, I can make a happy painting, I can make a sad painting, I can make an in-between painting. It's pretty amazing with throwing color together.
Yeah,
So.
to achieve so much with color, combinations.
Yeah.
Julia. Oh, wait, I'm not going to go to Julia.
Oh.
Yes, I am, so you don't have to be in the middle. Julia.
Yeah, I think color is really inherently emotional because we form all these bonds with color before we can speak. We process basically all information visually more than ever because we are, glued to our screens. But I think just kind of looping back to the technology, how technology, or especially the phones, the internet, the search engine, AI now, it's become possible to literally have access in your palm every image ever made, like through history. You can kind of literally see a cave painting, and then you can go to Venice and see these frescoes, these altarpieces. So I think as a painter, I'm constantly aware that every color, every gesture, figurative painting, abstract painting, it's all incredibly loaded, and I am dipping into the ocean of visual artists, the visual language. Everyone is aware of Picasso, everyone knows Pollock. So we all have all these image banks that we pull from immediately because we're so quick at processing images, visual stimuli, that I think even if I just gave you a red painting, maybe that will be a transcendent experience. Like Rothko, when the painting just vibrates, and people have very different experiences to those simple color vibrations. So I say all of that to say, color is what makes a painting, in my opinion. Color is the main actress. And then, or say, if I'm cooking a dish, that's the meat, the color. And I think then comes the gesture, the rendering, and then the composition. A painting, for me especially, is dealing with the square, with the rectangle. So there are a few essential ingredients, but color is the star, absolutely.
Okay. And Sue.
I've thought about this a lot, actually, because one of the things I've noticed over the years is that whenever I give a talk, I don't even mention color. But when other people talk about my work, they talk about color all the time. And I believe that my inherent relationship to color was something that I always had. And what I had to, as I was learning and training and making more and more paintings over more and more years, it became very obvious to me that color is very important, but really value oftentimes supersedes color. You know, the grayscale, dark to light. And so when I'm trying to solve a painting, I will find myself trying to use color in order to make something else pop out, and it's not working. And I can have two really opposing colors. I could have orange next to green, and there's something wrong. It's not creating the space that I needed to do. And ultimately, the value is off. And that's something, it took me a long time to understand. It's the light absorption or pushing out content and how I can make something have space around it. Like I've never thought, like I don't sit down and go, oh, I'm gonna make some red paintings now, or I'm gonna make some green paintings now. I just start making the painting, and then when I can't solve this part or that part or this part, I will, like as an example, the painting in the middle in the back, it has this peachy color as the sky. I probably painted, I got everything else done, and I painted that peachy color 5 or 6 or 7 different colors before I landed on the one that made it all come together. And so because the value's working really well against all the other more, it's vibrant, but yet it has this like earth tone to it, and then the peachy color just pushed it all forward and created the space beyond. But when it was yellow, it didn't work. When it was orange, it didn't work. When it was blue, it didn't work. And I tried different blues or different yellows. And that also does a thing in my paintings where it creates a vibration between forms, because sometimes some of the colors that I've painted over exist a little on the edge of a form. And so you'll see those vibrations, but in the end, the color is extremely important, but really it has to speak through the concept of value,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. Yeah, and I'm really glad you mentioned that about that peachy colors, because that's been, it has a vibration to it, and it has a presence to it. There's a whole world happening behind there, and now I understand that some of that maybe was achieved because of the layers, the multiple times you had to figure out what color, what value, yeah.
Yeah, and the one in my talk I showed you guys about Massachusetts, the cow pond where I played.
Yeah.
The orange, like I tried so much until finally I was just like, you know what, this orange-green thing, I'm just gonna put the orange in there, and it made the solution. And then I kind of thought about, like I said later, the power plant, all these weird things that really have they're not part of the making of the painting. It's like the after effect is something I thought about. But it's really ultimately that value-color relationship. They're twofold. They exist together.
They exist together, yeah. And it's like, for the students in the audience, that basic color theory class and all the color theory lessons that you have to take, they end up playing a big role in both, in all of your works, actually. All right, so so we were talking a little bit about color. Let's talk about the surface a little bit, because that was something that when Martha was first putting together the checklist, and I was getting really excited because of the the surface and just the juiciness and the delightfulness of being what I imagine being in the space would be like with having these surfaces. And I think that you all revel in the physicality of the paint itself and painting, from Julia's layered obstructions that you've mentioned before to Sue's gestural landscapes and Sally's poured luminous surfaces. What draws you to paint as a physical process rather than just a way to make an image? You go first.
It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun.
To begin with, it's really a lot of fun. Towards the end, it can be really difficult, but it feels really great to mix a color and then pour it on a canvas. And first you just had this blank white thing, and then suddenly there's almost life coming from it. You know, it's great. It feels really good.
Everyone should feel that. That's wonderful, God.
I do throw stuff away, though, too.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a disaster, but it's really exciting.
Either one of you that want to jump in?
Can you say the question again?
Oh, sure. Like, the physicality of painting? Like, why reveling in the idea of mark making and pushing the physical boundaries of the medium itself, instead of just using it as a way to make an image? You know, like
I got
talk?
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
I couldn't remember the word.
Yeah, that's right.
Should I go? Well, there's a few things for me. When I was young, I feel like it was the only thing that made me feel intelligent. I didn't have a lot of success in the intelligent school world. So, but I was always really good at being a painter, and the other kids looked up to me, and it's like the thing that gave me this like level of intelligence. And then as I grew older and got really absorbed in my relationship to my art making practice, I realized like as a short person, I enjoy like this physical interaction with these really big things, and I like removing and adding, and I like it when a painting finishes and you can see the old painting underneath it. I like all that history, and it happens more when I was using oil, a little less now with acrylic, just because of the materials I've chosen. And like Sally says, it's super fun, but I still to this day, like I don't have an emotional connection to my paintings beyond the intellectual construction of it. Like 10 people could walk in here and tell me that I'm the worst they've ever seen, and it wouldn't really bother me. I don't feel emotional attachments that way. So for me, the physical making of the painting is it's the drive, it's the exciting part.
So the object or the product is almost secondary to the process of the making.
Correct,
for you.
but I
Yeah.
still want the end product to be good.
But you still want it to be good.
Yeah, I want to get to that
You can
solution.
also identify when.
Yeah, I have paintings I've been painting on for 12 years, and I'm just like, drag it out every 6 months, and I'm like, yep, still terrible. I'm going to try these things and then put it back, and that like intellectual solution is really gratifying for me.
Okay. And Julia?
I guess I can speak about oil paint in particular. Well, I think oil paint is an incredibly generous medium. It can be perceived as difficult, but oil paint really lets you mold it and move it, makes you, like you can raise it out of the surface, light travels through it, it looks like it's coming out. Oil paint was described to be the best. It was invented to render flesh. I think de Kooning said that. I see all that, and I also adore oil paint because of not only its capacity to create striking visual presences, but I do enjoy all the historical baggage of oil paint.
Did you say the historical
baggage of oil painting in general. And I think that is also something that I'm constantly wrestling with. Yeah.
The historical baggage.
Of course, I think as a painter, you should be aware what you're continuing on and tapping into. Yeah.
Okay. It's a good segue to struggle. Sue, in an interview, I read an interview to you. I read an interview where you said, "Struggle creates my best work. When I am unsure of what I am producing and feeling like there's no thread, no understanding, that is the most important phase of discovery." So I'm wondering how the sense of uncertainty resonates across all of your practices. How do you each navigate not knowing? And how does uncertainty guide your process? So do you want to talk first, Sue, about, a little bit about that?
A great example is when I started making all the states paintings. Leading up to starting that, I went through all the phases of a landscape painter: painting outside, painting inside, painting half outside, inside, making it up, using photographs, all the things. And then by the time I got to the point where I felt like my skill set was capable of creating these large paintings I wanted to create, I did it, I cranked through it, and then it's like I get a little bored. I get to this point where I'm not feeling challenged, and so I often will then force myself to do the exact opposite of what I was just doing. And I might fully change materials, I might fully change the size, I might move to paper, I might do something that's just a shift, a big shift, in order to make it hard and feel lost, because that's the only way I can discover something new. If I just spent the rest of my life making these paintings, I think they would get really boring after a time. It would be like, oh, we just saw like 10 more Sue McNally giant landscape paintings, yawn. You know, like I want to feel challenged, like really challenged, and there's nothing more exciting than spending a year trying to solve a painting. Like, it might seem crazy, but it's so interesting when you constantly can't find the solution. And so, like, I do throw out stuff, but I have paintings that are terrible that I've saved, like I said before, and I pull them back out because I gotta find the solution. I gotta get in there. I gotta figure it out. I have to, like, dig through that thing and find the thing that's gonna make it a complete and interesting thing to look at for myself and everyone else.
Okay. Thank you. Julia, what about you? Uncertainty and struggle.
I think uncertainty is such a perfect word to describe basically all my paintings.
Right.
You're uncertain what you're looking at. You're uncertain how many people you're looking at. You're uncertain if this is a physical space, uncertain if this is psychological space. But yeah, I also find it very pointless if I don't have a challenge in front of me. I think all artists, especially, are just never satisfied. So I make sure that there is a struggle, and perhaps that is where abstraction comes in, where I have to react to what is before me, not the original image that I started with. So I'm just kind of building what is there, therefore getting one step further away from what it was, because ultimately I want it to be a total new vessel, if you will. Yeah, struggle is a driving factor, if anything, when it comes to painting, and it really is never about the end product. I don't think painters ever have, well, certain painters do. They have a final visual image in mind, and they work towards that. But that is a very different process than the struggle and the discovery. Then you suddenly arrive at the peak, and you say, oh, I've arrived, which is an incredible feeling. But perhaps maybe you want to climb a little higher, and then you put it away, take it back out, which is always necessary in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Like, I put these aside for months, a year, and then you pull them back out, and they're gross sometimes. Yeah. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I was so satisfied with this. Or you pulled something that you just put aside, and oh my God, I've never seen something fresher. So it all depends. Mm-hmm. But uncertainty is crucial.
Yeah. Okay. And Sally, how about you? How do you navigate that not knowing and uncertainty?
I just keep on working. But I'm thinking about all my artist friends and artists that I've admire. I've never heard an artist say, "Oh, this is so easy. I'm so happy. I just gonna." It's a commitment, and there's a lot of work and uncertainty and everything you're saying that goes into it. You know?
Yeah, so it's just kind of, you know what you signed up for when you chose this career path, that you were just going to be riding on this wave of uncertainty until the end of time.
Yeah. No, but it's wonderful. But no, that's very well put. Thank you. It's true. I mean, I don't know what are the percentage of people in the world who are artists. I don't know.
I don't know. Does anybody know that statistic?
I don't know.
I bet you have an amazing device in your hand that could tell us what percentage of
I know where
artists there are in the world.
it's a little group, or you know. So
Yeah, I'm not sure.
you do it, and sometimes it doesn't come easily, but that's when you make all the discoveries.
6%. 1.6% of the world or United States?
United States. None of these are scientific sources.
Wait, we have another answer in the audience.
Professional artists worldwide, it's 0.2%.
Wow, 0.2%.
But also then we have to ask the question, what defines a professional
Right.
artist? Do they have like an IRS, like paper trail? Is that a...
I'd like to say this information is provided by AI.
Thank you.
It's totally unreliable.
Mic drop there, that was great. You mentioned, Julia, you talked about the abstraction, and we've been, you've all talked about that earlier in your talks. What does you balance abstraction and representation? Each of you do that in some way or another, whether through figures or landscapes or organic forms. So what does that balance between abstraction and representation allow you to explore that you wouldn't be able to explore otherwise? Sally, what do you think?
Well, before, when we were looking at my images, and there were a lot of flowers, references to flowers, that I feel like sometimes they're portraits of a flower and not a portrait of a person, but it's, for me, a flower can have a spirit. So me working between abstraction and representation lets me bounce back and forth like that without having completely pinpointing something.
Okay. Sue, we'll go to you.
I guess, I mean, I've obviously, I mean, okay, not obviously. I think about abstraction versus representation a lot because I was always very representational in the way I did things. When I started the States Project, prior to that, when I was painting outside, my paintings were messy and maybe they would be, you know, appear abstract. But for me, I like to, it's just a constant dialogue. And I feel like, especially as I'm getting older, because what I'm making is just something I'm starting and reacting to, it's abstract in my mind, but the only way I can really solve it is by seeing a landscape in the end. There has to be like something in the end, even though I might make a series of random shapes and forms and things all along the way, but it has to feel like something in the end. So maybe ultimately representation wins over abstraction for me, but I try not to think too much about it because then I overthink it.
Okay. And Julia?
Yeah, people ask, what do you do? And then, I'm a painter. What kind of paintings do you make? I always say, well, the subject matter is figurative, but it's very abstract. And they get like, okay. But I think this binary thinking of like abstraction versus figuration, I mean, that's kind of a wrong myth that, we comforted ourselves with in order to kind of define an artistic movement of the modern era. But I think abstraction and figuration, on the same pendulum, or I dare say, maybe it's like one ring. If you go far enough, I think you meet figuration and abstraction. It's all on one disc. I guess I would love to describe like one painting. So with this blue one, of course, there is a figure right there, and then you think, oh, okay, this is a painting of this figure. But I never really approach my painting like that, because for me, that is the world, and I wonder if you can let yourself just see that, and that is the world, whatever that means to you. Like maybe the yellow strokes are a figure in this world. And I think about Julie Morettu's paintings a lot, because I mean, talk about world making. I see those marks, the smudges. That's a guy running over there. Or maybe these are trails, maybe these are memories. But it's a solid world where everything makes sense and has its own rules of the universe. And then I also have to mention Rubens' painting. I always see like Peter Paul Rubens' painting and I go, oh my God, that is the most sci-fi looking painting I've ever seen. No human can hold a posture like that, yet the whole world just makes sense. You take it as gospel. It's, oh, that must be the truth. And I think painting should be looked at like that. To me, that's the world. I think we have to kind of remind ourselves that like paintings are not a capturing of the real. It doesn't come reality, painting, but painting is creating an entity, the surface, an object, a thing that speaks for itself. Yeah. And I totally forgot what the question was.
Oh, no, that was good. That's good. I told the artist that we would honor all tangents, so
Okay, great.
we will honor that. No, that was that idea of creating these worlds. I think that's for each of you, though. Do that, and that's the one thing that I've been enjoying being here in this gallery, in this exhibition, the last couple weeks, is being able to inhabit that world, and then the world that Martha's created in this exhibition itself. You know, that there's, you've all sort of achieved that. And I do feel that part of the reason that there's these worlds, for me, viewing them, experiencing them, that really resonate is because of that tension between the abstraction and the representational. That, you know, so I think that for me, very successful because of that. All right, I'm gonna jump ahead to something else. When Julia and Sally we had a Zoom talk a few weeks ago, and you were both talking about deliberately creating obstacles for yourselves, setting up challenges or roadblocks as part of your process. So I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and I'm wondering what motivates that. What do you gain by introducing difficulty, and how does it shape where a painting ends up? So that was Sally and Julia were talking about this. Why are you creating roadblocks for yourself?
So my paintings can grow and move forward and go places where they haven't been yet. And then I just don't rely on what my paintings, what I already know, what I've already done. I could do that, but then I won't learn anything new. So
what's an example of an act? Is it a mark? Is it are there like rules you're setting up for yourself that are these little challenges that you have to circumvent? Or
if it comes easy to me, then I feel like, okay, this was too easy, so you got to throw something else in there that is a challenge.
Okay, I see. Okay. And Julia, how about you? The roadblocks. You had said that you set up obstacles and challenges for yourself.
Well, like I mentioned, I would say the theme of kind of like my total, I have zero faith in communication in general is kind of like the theme of my works. It's always social situations, it's relationships. It's like, I think I'm saying all these things to you, but I have no idea what's actually landing, because I'm aware this face, this body is speaking, and you are perceiving me through so many visual cues. So with my works, the reason why I really want to constantly kind of lose, destroy, put together, and then I don't even know where it started, and that's when it starts to kind of speak for itself, because I've kind of abandoned, through obstruction and struggle, that like, okay, what happens when a visual communication completely collapses in on itself, and it's just all strokes and performance of the paint, and it draws you in, but what is it giving you? I'm very fascinated by what that brings to the table when it comes to one-on-one with a viewer. Yeah.
Okay, and Sue, how about you? Do you set up intentional?
I have
roadblocks?
one thing that I do very strategically often, and I learned it through a teacher when I was in graduate school. And I used to do this thing where I'd be making a painting and I'd get to this area where this was so important and really amazing, and I was trying to solve by going around it all the time. And I just got to the point where I just always remove it. And it'll take me a really long time, like I might be painting something and I'm like, I love this tree, it's so awesome, I'm just gonna leave it there and paint all the way around it to try and figure out how to solve it. And then I eventually realize, oh no, okay, take it out. So I'll either obscure it, scrape it off, just somehow it gets completely removed as the main element, because I'm treating it with these like kind of kid gloves, and it's the failure of the painting.
Okay, so do you other two also like see something that's just so precious? Like that's what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I'm imagining like it's this precious moment of beautifulness, right, on the canvas, and I don't want to touch it because everything
it's
else
so good right now.
Right,
Yeah.
it's just so
And it's
perfect,
really
and
not.
everything else is failing, right?
Right.
Do Sally and Julia, do you have that?
100%, and then
Yeah.
I know I got to ruin that, so I
Yeah.
do the same thing.
So the same thing.
You know
is-
it's going. You don't want it to, but eventually it's going.
Julia.
I mean, with my work, I guess one of the goals that I forgot to mention definitely is that I want the eyes to constantly bounce around.
Yeah.
I never want to give you a resting place. And maybe you can grab onto like, oh, I see a finger, I see a foot, I see a wine glass. These moments, but these are just trails that you bounce around, and there's this all-at-onceness that I want the paintings to achieve. So that is in itself a roadblock in a way, in order to attain a certain speed. Yeah, but
Do you like the idea of like precious little moments
Yeah,
on the canvas?
those
I
moments
guess maybe not, because
those moments are actually, it of course happens, and it happens early on, and it's so dangerous because you want to save that. But that's the first thing you have to lose, because now if you obsess over that corner, it's going to be a very bad painting. Yeah, because
losing the forest for the trees, yeah. And my perfect segue there to talking about landscapes with my comment. Thank you, someone, for laughing. Sue, this one's for you.
Okay.
This is you referenced this a little bit earlier. So you've been for over 30 years. You've been painting the American landscape. Mm-hmm. How do you see your work contributing to the long tradition of American landscape painting?
I mean, I guess the only way I see it is that I hope it contributes to the long tradition of landscape painting. I mean, that would be amazing. You know, for me to be within that group of humans in the history and all the things, I don't sit around and think of myself as like, I'm part of the long history of American landscape. But it's more that like I can step back and hope that I can be seen in that context.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that whenever during your artist talk, when you showed the one gallery shot with I think it was the one with your father in it. And you were in your work was in the gallery, and you said it was with some other
Yeah, and that was
American
really exciting.
landscape greats. Yeah.
To have spent all these years just like making landscape paintings, which, like I said, at times can be some of the uncoolest behavior you could pull off. It's really amazing to just like be contextualized like that. It feels really exciting.
Yeah. And I guess like a similar question, but for Julia, which has to do with portraiture, because you described your work just a little bit ago, figurative but abstract, right? Portraits, but so are they portraits? And then do you consider these works to be part of the tradition of portrait making?
I guess perhaps more figurative painting, but not necessarily portraiture, because at the end of it all, the figures kind of become anybody, or at least I want them to be able to be anybody. And that is why it's almost a glimpse of a body, and there's a glimpse of a calf or a foot. And then obviously it's so ingrained in our brains that like we know human form so well, and we exist in one. So it's more wrestling with the figuration just as an ingredient like paint, rather than specific portraiture. But it could be easily a psychological portrait, easily just a realistical portrait of a chaotic dinner party. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about this exhibition and sort of where you sit with it. So the exhibition is part of a contemporary series that was founded by a woman, Louise Jordan Smith, who is an artist, as we all know, an artist, educator, a visionary, whose goal was to champion living artists. And all of you are continuing this legacy today, and I think Martha mentioned that earlier. So as women painters working today, do you feel a connection to the legacy of women creating and shaping spaces for art? And how does that history, community show up in your practice? So where do your women painters, do you feel a connection to the legacy of the women who came before you? Sally, what do you think?
Well, I have great admiration for people who set the path for others. Historically, I'm just thinking, what about housewives in the 40s and the 30s and the 50s, when the role of the woman was basically to stay home and take care of her husband. So it's great when people put aside what they're told they're supposed to do and go on a new path and set the way for others. It's wonderful.
Okay. Julia?
One of my greatest icons are a lot of women painters. Joan Mitchell, you just can't help but just drool at. Cecily Brown, oh my goodness, she just opened the door to a certain language. Julie Moretu, we have her. I mean, Jenny Saville, all these icons that I constantly can't help but think of. And they have also looked at earlier generations of artists, and therefore I believe I'm also looking at, and have to look at, everyone that they have been influenced by. But also, a creative act is inherently human, but also inherently female, if you will. It's a very womanly act to create. And also, in the domestic spaces, women are always creating, but at a certain point, painting became this masculine thing to do. And I think New York has a very heavy hand in that. But I just see it as continuing and kind of bringing what was already there to the surface and kind of turning it up a notch as much as you can, yeah.
Okay. And Sue, what about you?
Oops. Okay, as a human, I definitely have a feminist lefty bent. All my thoughts and things about the way women are treated in the world and all the things. As a painter, I'm just a painter. I never think about myself as a woman painter, ever. I just don't think that way. Because I've been making things since the day I was born. I mean, maybe not the day I was born, except, you know.
I think you said 5 last night.
5, I was
Yeah,
pretty
you were
young.
5,
Like,
yeah.
I just,
Didn't you have to like construct something?
yeah, my mom, we were
Yeah.
living with my grandparents, and I was like 4 or 5, and I only had newspaper, and I said, I'm gonna make a drum set. And she's like, you can't make a drum. And I made a drum. And like, that's just the only way I've ever communicated with the world, sort of, is just as a maker. So I just don't think of myself as a woman artist. I don't, and frankly, I don't want to be qualified like that. I mean, although, you know, there's all different groups of people that get shafted throughout the system of, you know, contemporary art life, and all the white guys are in charge, and it's a bummer, but I just don't think of myself that way. I think of myself in that context when I'm reading and, you know, thinking about all my politics and all my things and all my stuff. But as a painter, I just go in there and paint.
Yeah, okay. Julia, what about you?
She already went.
Oh, that's right. I'm so sorry.
Ah, you made a mistake.
I made a mistake. It happens frequently, believe me.
Can I
Yeah,
add to
yeah,
that? I
yeah.
just have to add to that also, because I also agree with Sue on that respect, like male, female, but there's, and I have to give credit to everybody who stands up for themselves, whether, especially through history, whether male, female, whatever, rich, poor, it's just, for people who stand up to do the right thing, is pretty amazing. So.
Yeah, touche. I guess though, as working artists in New York, and you've had exhibitions in New York, or you live in New York, you've been in all of you have been in the New York art world, you've been in major art markets. Do you see in gender inequalities still persisting for women artists? Yeah. And then in what ways do those sort of present themselves?
I think all you have to do is look up like top 10 auction
Yeah.
records.
There you
We can
go.
start there.
Got it.
Yeah. So, yeah, the valuation that seems to be tied with a certain aspect, it's, of course, it's still there. Yeah.
What she said.
What she said.
I just see so much humanity inequality right now going on in the world that.
Oh, so this is not a question that I sent, but we talked about it a little bit on the Zoom call. So Sue, you'll just jump along here, because this is something that a lot of the classes here at the college, we are talking about the role of artists as communicators around social justice issues. So, like, what role do you think artists play? Because that's not the way you're making art, right? But do you think that it's important for artists to use their visual voices and their visual language to, you know, bring about some of those injustices you're talking about, or inequalities?
I think the artists should just make their kind of art. I know that sounds really simple, but what is your intuitive language as an artist? Mm-hmm. Like mine is, right. You see, some people work with political subjects, which is amazing, and that's what they should do. But I think you should just follow your own road as an artist. And
Yeah.
I'm glad people are working in all different subjects. So.
Yeah, room for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Julia?
Yeah, I remember we
Yeah.
briefly talked about this over Zoom. I think great art definitely has the potential and the power to convey a political message that transcends time. We have plenty of, a lot of examples of that. But I think if you really want to be an activist and fight for a cause, perhaps painting isn't the way to go. It can be one of many outlets to fight for a cause, but when it comes to something that is so inherently a creative act and we're trying to discover something, it's a solitary act, it's so internal. I'm not sure if this is the right medium to be political, if that is the main drive. And I'm sure the political artworks that are just, I mean, the New York Times cover, I forget her, anyway, her painting was recently asked to be removed. I forget. Exactly. So a great work has the capacity to transcend the boundaries of just beautiful work. And I think that is incredibly powerful. But there are many other ways where the message can travel much quicker, much more effectively, cut deeper.
Okay. Sue, do you have any?
Well, what I was just thinking about is that, like I said earlier, like my personal beliefs and the things that I'm passionate about, like you said, I think there's a lot of treating each other very poorly at this time in humanity, which is extremely depressing. I find climate change to be super depressing. But I also, I've had people say they want to include me in a show or something, and they want me to talk about my paintings as if they're about climate change, and they're not. I'm making paintings. What I find important, I volunteer for a homeless organization that has a lot of meaning for me. My paintings are not out in the world to make some giant change. If it tortures somebody and they have a reaction to it, great. I would gladly take that on. However, I just don't think that, for me, that's what my paintings are out in the world doing.
Yeah.
But I feel strongly about many issues and things, and I take action in other parts of my life. I live on an island, it's like we have wind turbines. Everybody hates the wind turbines because it ruins the view, and I'm just like, people, like, get a grip. We're going to be underwater here, but I'm not going to hang up my painting and pretend it's about climate change because that just seems disingenuous.
Well, and
I'm not even sure that answered the question.
No, I mean, it's an open-ended response, but that's also something that connects back to our title. What's audacious about these works is that they're not necessarily trying to make a political statement or talk about social justice issues at a time when it seems like a lot of artists are doing that, which is great, and there is room for all of it. But there's an audacity to that too,
Yeah, and some people, that's what their art is about.
Yeah.
And they've always been that way, and that's an important voice for them, or their voice is really important at that time because that's what their work is for and about, and that's a different thing, I think, than, I'm speaking for myself here, than for what I would make.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
wanted to say, I think a perfect example of what you're talking about is the Betty sword that you have hanging, which is breathtaking and heartbreaking and stunning. So
Thank you.
initially, there's a fragility to it, but then when you really look, you go, oh my gosh. So
All right, let's change things up for the last couple of moments. I'm going to check time. I think actually, this will be the last question before I turn it over. So this one comes from my museum educator playbook. I was explaining that, I feel like there are these worlds that you've created. And so we will often, I do this with students of all ages and the docents do, we will talk about inviting you as a viewer into a painting, and then imagine that you're walking around or floating around and engage in your senses. What's something that you hear? What's something you would see? What's something that you would smell? If you could taste something, what would you taste? So I'm going to ask each of you to do that with one of your works of art. So, or actually you could do it with one of your works of art. So you know, take a moment, look at one of your paintings, and then tell us, if you were inside there, what is it that you hear? What do you see? What do you smell? What do you taste? And whoever wants to start.
I'll go.
Okay, Sally's gonna
I'll
go.
just, this piece, Rising and Setting, is a metaphor for me for being born, living, and then going somewhere else. There's the white in the beginning, well, not on the one side, and then traveling around, experiencing, rising, and then setting. So I guess I experience life.
All of that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Either of you want to? Literally, you're inside your painting.
That is such an unfair question because we know exactly where the work started. We're witnesses to every single step, and then we have the final product that is revealed upon us. So, but
Well, that's okay. You don't have to force it.
But I think it is important to enter the painting from the surface in, as I would want you to enter the painting that way. And now I'm frozen. I guess I imagine these squares almost holding space and becoming an environment that, well, I guess psychological experiences are physical spaces. I often feel that. When you are nervous, it's a physical space, and that is the only space you exist in. When you're in love, that's a physical space that you exist in. I think these contained in the body, in terms of the body, it is a contained experience. And we are well aware that, like, we're not surrounded by these tender strokes of color everywhere. But yes, I think it gives you a glimpse into a space that always escapes description, if you will, but an utterly human condition altogether. Yeah.
Okay. We'll end with you, Sue.
Okay, it's kind of an easy question for me because I did spend 25 years living outside, basically, not all year long, obviously, but that's a big part of how I've gotten to know the landscape and the smells and the shapes and the wind and the dust or the wetness or the whatever it is. And so for me, I think, especially now that I'm making paintings that are leaning into these, these made-up worlds, the solution comes from me being able to recognize a few of those feelings. So like, I'm like, oh, that's done. That feels like a cramped backyard somewhere over here, or it feels like a weird swamp somewhere over here. Whereas, which is a little different than, I can tell you what that smelled like, I can tell you what it looked like, I can tell you how it felt, same for that, same for that. It's really different. It's more, the painting is solved by me having that feeling, which I think creates some of the representational language on top of the other forms that I'm throwing in there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for playing along.
That was a good question, though. Do you ask students that?
Yeah.
To find that in a painting?
Yeah, and
Or a
I'm
piece of art?
realizing that probably was incredibly unfair because, like you said, you have a history with this work that you've already articulated so beautifully that you can't necessarily articulate the whole journey. That's what the painting is for, so, but yeah, usually the responses are more like, oh, I'm, when you're in the cemetery, I might hear mosquitoes because it's a hot weather. I might, smell the willow, things like that. So I want to open it up to questions out here in the audience. Martha is going to walk around with this microphone, and we would, for the benefit of our recording, if you could please wait until you receive the microphone before you ask your question. So, questions from the audience.
Okay, so this is a little less related to any of your works, and more like a little tidbit of conversation we had earlier. But what would you guys, like at what point do you think an artist becomes a professional artist?
I don't even know.
When you make a commitment to take jobs that you don't really want, but you want to paint more, and just make that commitment to, there's struggles, well, there's struggles if you do, but make a long-term commitment that you want to do it. It's kind of simple. Anyway, for me, I just decided. And then I would try to do other things, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm going to go back to doing painting. So if you really end up doing it, the decision will almost make itself for you. Like a lot of people I went to art school with, most of them aren't painting anymore. Some of them have these amazing jobs. It's wonderful, but it kind of weeds itself out. And if you feel like you want to do something else, you should try that. And then if you really want to be an artist, you'll come back to it. So for me, the professional decision wasn't about a financial decision. So, and that's something else, that's another discussion. And that's it. For me, anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree with Sally completely. It's like, I too, in all of the phases that I've been, there's maybe one or two people still making art, like really productively and in a mature way from where I started out in school and stuff like that. I really agree with everything you said, and like I've had a million side gigs just to like I said, make as much money in as little time as possible so I can do the thing that I actually care about. And then one day something happens to you professionally. Like my first museum purchase was like, oh, I guess I'm real, and that's sort of it for me.
I definitely agree. And yeah, if that is your main pursuit, and I think a lot of painters, especially just artists, I think they're artists because they can't help but be an artist. I think it's a real struggle. I've definitely had the struggle of forcing myself to kind of pursue a different discipline and then simply couldn't do it. And then you just return and you return. You may depart, but the road always brings you back onto it. But yeah, I think you're a professional artist as long as you pursue this as the main thing. You make so many sacrifices and you do all these other things in order to get back down that road.
Yeah, and I also just want to say there are lots of people in the world that make stuff all day, every day, and just do it at home or do it in their life wherever, and they don't get somewhere that is, they don't end up in like this professional context. But it doesn't mean that you're not professional because it's your life calling and your growth and your need. So they kind of, professional could be seen as your drive. It's like a drive.
I have a question for Sue. I was wondering if you were done with your state series, and if not, what state's next?
I have 6 left. I have Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Arkansas, and Hawaii. And I don't know what's next. I actually have an Arkansas idea happening. I need to go back around the Great Lakes, and I'm saving Hawaii for last because I'm going to go on an epic vacation. I want to do a volcano there because that's a thing that doesn't exist anywhere in the continental U.S. And well, that's not true, Washington, but anyway.
And you know about the volcano residency, right?
Yes, I do. I do know about that. Thank you.
Are there any completed paintings done by any of the three of you that have been
sold to a gallery of some sort, or even here, that you just look at and you're like, I want to change something?
I guess I want to go back to the comment you made. My relationship with like a finished work is pretty similar. I think when a work is complete, you can finally let it go, leave the nest. I wash my hands of it. You try to be just, hey, you go do your thing and speak for yourself is my relationship with my paintings. But absolutely, whenever you kind of return to a work, because a work being complete is kind of an arbitrary decision, because it's not a math equation. There is no this equals that. If you wanted to, you can completely obliterate, lose the whole thing, and then you can still call it complete. So there's always, and because we are human beings that constantly evolve as a result of just existing in the world that is constantly also changing, yeah, when I revisit older works, I am taken aback that like, wow, that's fun, but also, I would have, can I do that again? Would I change that? Yeah, that's definitely a conversation that I have with myself.
I don't have that feeling, but there's about 3 paintings that I sold that I wish I could have back.
Yeah, yeah. That's what, I have what she said, and then once, about 20 years ago, I sold work to the RISD Museum. They bought a painting and a bunch of drawings, and they've curated the drawings in 1,000,000 times and never the painting. And I believe that the painting was a time when I was super broke, and I used this really cheap white, and it cracked a whole section. I think the top half of it is really cracked, because I've seen it in other paintings from that time period. So I regret letting it go out into the world that way, but I don't know this is just a speculation. Maybe they're just like, nah, that painting's not that great, and we're not putting it into any shows. But that's just like my little whatever.
Any other questions? I think we have time for one more.
Thank you. Is it on? Yes. So since you just made that statement about that painting, would you approach RISD and say, well, let me see it, first of all, and if it's cracked, would you then take it back and rework it?
I would 100% approach them, and if it's cracked, it's not repairable, but I would give them something else. I would do something like that if they wanted to, but they, I don't know, maybe for them, I don't know. I haven't done it. It's purely speculation, and it might just be the neurotic Sue doing that, so who knows.
So, thank you so much. I know there are more questions, but we're all going to go into the reception area, and you can have conversations in there with their extra questions.
Yeah, that's what she said.
That's about it. So, thank you so much.